I want us to think about chastity. And I'm going to say that word, and I know you're just about to push the video. You want to go elsewhere. You're thinking, chastity, that reminds me of some awkward medieval garment, or is reminding me of, some awkward purity talk I had a long time ago. I know what you're thinking. Of all the things that you should think about today, chastity is maybe not the one that's most important. And I want to push back against that. And I want to tell you that actually there's nothing that you need more than a chaste heart. Now, how do we get there? How do I convince you that actually this virtue of chastity, it's not just something that's about our, sexual purity, and it's not just something about, what might affect our marriage, that actually chastity is something that gets to the very heart and the very root of discipleship, of devotion to God, of what it means to live a holy life. Now, let's just start with a definition. I'll give you a definition. We'll think about chastity, and then I want us to move into a hymn workout, give you something to meditate on so that you can grow in this virtue. So first of all, what is chastity? And I think the best definition I know of is chastity is disciplining desire for the sake of love. Really what chastity is, it's a virtue that preserves the purity and the strength of love. And what happens is when you commit your love to some object, whether it's God, whether it's to a spouse, you could even talk about the way, say, an athlete commits themselves to a love of a sport. But as soon as you have committed love, you realize that there are all kinds of things that want to spoil that love or to dilute that love. And so anybody who has their eyes fixed on an object of love needs to preserve the love from other desires. And that's what chastity is. It's disciplining desire for the sake of love. It's saying no to things that would lead you away from that object or weaken that relationship with that object. And it's saying yes consistently that I'm going to pursue that object of love above, before all other things. Now, as soon as you think of chastity in those terms, you realize, oh, this is relevant to discipleship. Because what we are as Christians, we are people who have given our heart to the Lord. He is the highest object of our love. And we know that everything that counts as sin is basically a misguided desire pulling us away from that object of love, God himself. And so what a chaste heart means as a Christian is a heart that's devoted to the pursuit of God. Now, what does it look like to pursue chastity? What does it look like to have a heart that longs to be chaste for the groom, Jesus? Now, that's where this hymn can help us. I want us to look at a hymn. It's a hymn by Paul Gerhardt. It's actually a much longer hymn, but I've just got 4 stanzas for you here. And it's one that John Wesley thought was so wonderful, he translated it. So in a sense, we get a little bit of Paul Gerhardt and we get a little bit of John Wesley in this. Now, let me just read the first stanza, and it's really going to depict beautifully what a chaste heart looks like. Jesus, thy boundless love to me, no thought can reach, no tongue declare. O knit my thankful heart to thee, and reign without a rival there. Thine wholly, thine alone I am. Be thou my rod and staff and guide. Now, what I want you to think about, first, what is in view of the hymn writer is the boundless love of Jesus. God loves us first, and we respond with love. But the only way our love ever reaches any boiling point is by really beholding his love. Now, this hymn writer has so seen the wonder of God's love that he says that he wants his thankful heart to be knit to the heart of Jesus. I mean, to where the two become one. In that all of a sudden his heart is such that the love of Jesus reigns in his heart without any other rival. And friends, that's what we're talking about with chastity, that there's a highest object of love that is held with such esteem that you long that there be no rival, no one who would turn your eyes from the one who is your lover. The hymn writer says, thine wholly, thine alone I am. This is the exclusivity of love. We know that this is true with marriage. You can't, really be married to multiple people. You can't love people with a purity of love, or multiple people. And the same is true with God, that if we really have chaste hearts, we want him to have the whole of our heart, not just a part of it. Let me read the second stanza. O grant that nothing in my soul may dwell, but thy pure love alone. O may thy love possess me whole, my joy, my treasure, and my crown. All coldness from my heart remove, my every act, word, thought be love. Now, if you want to do a hymn workout, what you do is you take a stanza that's rich like this and you just work through it word by word, line by line. And you think about it until you can actually vocalize it with authenticity. Grant that nothing in my soul may dwell but thy pure love alone. If you want to know what would eradicate sin and sinful desire from your heart, it would be when you reach that place that the only thing that you wanted to dwell in your heart was the purity of love of God. At the point your heart is longing for God in that way, sin is seen for all of its sinfulness. And that's when you begin to find the power to actually say no to temptation. Oh, may thy love possess me whole, my joy, my treasure, and my crown. 3 images. They're all worth thinking about. What would it be like to really hold Jesus as your joy, the one who gives you delight? To uphold him as your treasure, the thing that you find highest value in. For him to be your crown, what gives weight and honor to your existence. All coldness from my heart remove. Notice the imagery there. It's changing from objects like treasure and crown to something like a fire that just as a fire can grow cold, we know that can happen to our own hearts. So all coldness from my heart remove. In this prayer that everything from this hymn writer's life would be an expression of love of Jesus. Is that not chastity? Is that not really giving yourself to one highest object of love? Wonderful third stanza. I'll skip it. I want to move down to stanza 4. The reason this last stanza is so important is because we need to see that chastity, like all virtue, it's a contest, it's a trial, it's a difficult thing to pursue because there's all kinds of opposition in our way. And so we don't want to just imagine that you can sit in this kind of honeymoon state and stay there without anything trying to vie for your affections. But rather you need to see that it's going to take daily dedication to maintain a heart for God. So listen to this 4th stanza. This love unwearied I pursue and dauntlessly to thee aspire. Now the hymn writer has to say that because it's a wearying thing. It's a tiring thing to wake up each day and to put one object before you. And just as Kierkegaard said, purity of heart is to will one thing every day, to say, I want one thing today. I want to know your love. I want to give you my love. Oh, may thy love my hope renew, burn in my soul like heavenly fire, and day and night be all my care to guard this sacred treasure there. Now, this image of a fire, it really comes from Leviticus. Maybe you remember the Israelites, they set up the tabernacle, they build the altar. Finally, it's time to really inaugurate the whole of the offerings and sacrifices of Israel. Remember, God, his fire comes, it consumes the offering. And from thenceforth, it's the job of the priest to maintain the fire on the altar. There's a burnt offering morning and evening. And that fire is not meant to go out. And that fire representing the presence of God, the covenant between God and his people. What this last stanza is doing is taking that image of the heavenly fire burning in the soul. And our heart being like an altar that's meant to give worship to God. But that recognition that in order for that love to burn, that day and night, we have to make it all of our care to guard the sacred treasure there. It's not just going to happen on its own. We know this from marriage. If you just expect marriage and love and everything to happen on its own, you're going to find over time that love, it's going to begin to grow cold. And the same is true with God. You've got to maintain it. You got to pursue it. You got to long for it. You got to ask God to pour his love into your heart so you've got love to pour back before him. So if you long for chastity, if you want to see your desire disciplined for the sake of love of God, let me encourage you, meditate on this hymn and realize that chastity, this is something that gets to the very heart of discipleship. And it's a virtue that we all need to be asking God to give us so that we can pursue holiness in this life.